Are you a therapist in private practice frustrated with trying to build the practice that you want? Maybe you have fewer clients than you want. Maybe you have too many clients, but they're not private pay, so you're working too hard for what you're earning. Perhaps you've been taking any clients who call just to pay the bills, but you really want to work with different people. If you want a full private practice with the right clients and the confidence that it will remain full, I think you'll really like this video. Before I dive in, who the heck am I and why should you listen to me? I'm Becky DeGrossa, the founder of CounselingWise. I was a therapist until 2010. Prior to that, I worked for many years at IBM, and I have helped over 300 therapists build solid private practices that just stay full. Basically, I'm different because I develop systems that work. And to prove that I'm not just another outsider clueless about the world of therapy, let me give you a little background. I've presented practice building presentations at goodtherapy.org. I was one of the first interviewed by Melvin Varghese in his Selling the Couch podcast. I am featured as a guest poster on Private Practice from the Inside Out with Tamara Suttle. I was interviewed by Ernesto Segismundo for his Film It podcast. I've been on the Private Practice Startup podcast. I have presented at the Private Practice Symposium at Naropa University. I presented at Colorado Counseling Association's annual conference. I presented at Colorado Association of Psychotherapists. I was part of the Full Couch Summit recently. In Howard Baumgartner's Private Practice Essentials, Business Tools for Mental Health Professionals, he said Becky DeGrossa has revolutionized the online therapy website building process. I have one of the largest practice building groups on Facebook. And I have many recommendations on both Alignable and on Facebook. Out in therapist Facebook groups, there's lots and lots of recommendations for CounselingWise and for me. Whew. Okay, now that you know I'm in the thick of it with you, let's get back to the important stuff. So, if you've been working at building your practice, you're already well aware of a big problem in our field. And that problem is that there's just too much conflicting advice out there about how to build a real practice. Over the years, I've been able to discern a pattern in how therapists make their way through this maze of advice. There seems to be 3 phases of this journey. I call the first phase, I hope this works. I call the second phase, maybe I need something more. And I call the third phase, oh God, please let this be the answer. So let's talk about the I hope this works advice. This is the most common advice. It includes visit doctor's offices, offer your services for a discount, network with other therapists, list yourself on Psychology Today. Now, it's not that these suggestions won't yield anything. If you do these things, you'll certainly get a few clients, but you'll soon realize that these tactics don't build a steady stream of clients that you want. Once you realize that, you then move to the next phase, which includes advice that is actually a little more sophisticated. So this is the maybe I need something more phase, and it includes advice like develop a unique niche, brand yourself so that you stand out, learn how to write really compelling copy for your website, learn SEO, which is search engine optimization, and blog your way to a full practice. Again, there's nothing wrong with any of these suggestions. In fact, I recommend some of them myself. The problem is that any one of these things, niching, branding, good copy, SEO, blogging, they're all just pieces of a whole. None of them are the solution, yet people hold them out to be the solution. It's kind of like those diets that claim that if you eat 3 grapefruits a day, you'll achieve optimum health. Ideas like this really appeal to that part of us that wants something simple and magical, even though deep down we know there's got to be more to it. Once you try the maybe I need something more suggestions and you still don't reach your goals, you then move to the final phase. The final phase is, oh God, please let this be the answer. So this includes advice like run Facebook ads, create a YouTube channel, use Google AdWords, market yourself on Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, whatever. I call this last set the frosting suggestions. Some of these can sweeten your cake, but if you don't have an awesome cake yet, what's the point? The biggest problem with all of these pieces of advice, there are little morsels of truth in all of them. And because of those truth bites, it is very easy to get totally overwhelmed. This overwhelm, in my experience, is why it takes many therapists 2 to 3 years to get clear on what they're doing and finally start growing reliably. So if you feel overwhelmed, intimidated, or feel like you're a total slacker because you're not doing all of these things, just relax. No one can do all of these things, least of all someone doing the emotionally demanding work of therapy. The good news is you don't have to do all of these things to build the practice that you want. There is a much simpler way for you to build a practice that supports you and allows you to do good work with your clients. Let me tell you the stories of a few of the hundreds of clients I've worked with who have grown full and fulfilling practices without going insane. April Lyons in Boulder, Colorado is one of the therapists I've worked with. April started her practice in the overcrowded therapy town of Boulder, Colorado, and she couldn't get on any insurance panels because they were all closed. But rather than flailing around, April used my system, launched her website, and started getting private pay clients right away. Many of her fellow therapists have had to leave the field, but April's been full for some time now, and recently, April hired 2 other clinicians to join her practice. Maisha Parsha in Omaha, Nebraska is another person that I worked with. She had been in a group practice for 2 years and was never full. She began solo practice, and when we met, she'd been at that for a year. Out on her own, she tried Psychology Today and the old HOPE method. She was harassing her doctor, sending letters to other doctors, signing up for sliding scale platforms like OpenPath, and attempting to make other options work. Once she started working with me, she experienced drastic changes within 3 months. She got completely full and began scrambling to establish a waiting list. Another therapist I worked with was Jim Davidson in Plano, Texas. Jim and his wife left an established practice in Ohio to move to Texas to be near their children and grandchildren. After several attempts to build a practice as a newcomer in Texas, Jim was really frustrated. He and his wife were on panels, and they were seeing 90 clients a week between them, and they were exhausted. Jim worked with me to get things turned around. In short time, they became a private pay-only practice and made more money than before, working much, much less. Another therapist I had the pleasure of working with was Janie McMahon. Janie came to therapy as a third career, and to save money, she began by doing things herself. She learned a lot in the process, but she decided it was going too slow. Once we began working together, she went from struggling to full. She now maintains a full calendar in a very competitive market. She says her only regret is that she didn't begin working with me sooner. After her private practice filled, however, she then decided to start a group practice, and that one is filling quickly as well. Another success story is Diane Spear. Diane practices in the most saturated therapy market on the planet, New York City. When I began working with Diane, she had already had a website up for 8 years, but she wasn't getting clients from it. After we worked together, Diane began getting many client calls. When I talked to her a month ago, she told me that she was getting 4 to 10 new client contacts each week. This may sound crazy, but her caseload is up to 47 clients per week. Don't worry, you don't have to see that many clients. Peter Hanna in Seattle, Washington is not the average therapist tech-wise. He was a webmaster before becoming a therapist, and he ran his own website for the first decade of his practice. During that time, he was also creating Google AdWords campaigns for other therapists and doing his practice part-time. In fact, I consider him to be the grandfather of Google Ads in our space. Anyway, he decided to stop his ad services and focus exclusively on his practice and upgrade his website and his marketing. He worked with me this time around. He was really happy with the process. I was so honored that he chose us. After all, this guy knew what he was doing already. His practice is full now, and he has the clients that he prefers. Finally, I'll talk about Lisa Orbe Austin. Lisa is a real go-getter therapist. Both she and her husband, Rich, have their doctorates and wanted to have a career coaching practice in New York City. She wasn't afraid to spend money to make her dream a reality, so she invested a lot in a beautiful custom website. When that didn't work to generate client calls, she then paid for Google AdWords to drive traffic to her site. When she still wasn't getting enough clients, she hired an SEO guy. He just overwhelmed her and was of no help. She called me then, and we walked through all she had done. We found the big holes and came up with a better plan. In less than a year, Lisa was full, and Rich was able to quit his full-time job and join her in their practice. Now, note that all of these therapists were in different places when they began working with me. Some had been in private practice for a short time, some for quite a few years. Some had hired other people or companies to help them, some had tried everything on their own. Some had very few clients, some had a lot of clients, but not the right ones, and some just wanted off panels so they could ditch the paperwork and make more money. In all these cases, they started working with me the same way. 1, we talked first and figured out what they needed. We figured out where the holes were. Then 2, I helped them get the work done. Many other solutions out there are cookie-cutter solutions. If what is offered is not what you need based on where you're at, it's just not going to help you. I believe we need to look at where you're at first, get clear on what you need, and then talk about what will get you there. But let's talk for a minute about what you really need to fill your practice and keep it full. It's actually not that complicated. In order to be successful, all private practice owners need to get 3 things right. 1, you need to offer help that people are looking for. 2, you need to be findable when people are looking for that help. And 3, when found, you must convince folks that you are the perfect therapist for them. When therapists and I get together and we really look at their marketing, what we usually find is that though the therapist thought they had nailed these things, they really hadn't. In April's case, she was offering help that was in demand, but she wasn't findable when people searched for that help. And for the few who did find her, she didn't impact them enough with a strong message to make them want to call her. In Maisha's case, she was offering some help that was in demand, but this wasn't entirely clear to her potential clients. She also wasn't findable. And finally, when people somehow stumbled to her website, she didn't impact them enough to make the phone calls happen. Once she understood what the problem was, she dove in with our guidance and filled her practice in 3 months. In Jim's case, he was definitely offering what people wanted. After all, he'd already practiced successfully in another location for 25 years. But in his new location, no one could find him. And like April and Maisha, his message was too general and didn't really move people. So once we worked together to fix these problems, he was able to dump all of his insurance panels and make a lot more working a lot less. Janie was trying really hard to figure all this out on her own. She knew her niche, but she didn't know how to ensure people could find her, nor how to make sure they got over the finish line by calling her. Once we worked together on these aspects of her marketing, she filled her practice, and then, as I said, she started another practice across the parking lot from her office. Now, Diane was meeting market demand with her specialties, but she wasn't being found by enough people. When we reviewed her marketing, she also realized that she was talking too much about herself on her site and not enough about her potential clients. When we switched that up, the phone began ringing to the tune of 1 to 2 client calls per day. In Peter's case, he already knew a lot, technically, but he didn't want to just do the same thing he'd been doing. So we talked about how he could better target his ideal clients and improve his marketing, and then work together to get it done. He now has a full counseling practice and is really happy to be done with the tech stuff. And in Lisa's case, when she and I talked, she realized that even though she thought her site was really clear, after she'd invested all this money in it, it wasn't communicating what benefits potential clients could expect. And besides that, people couldn't find her anyway. So we worked together to fix those problems, and voila, her husband got to quit his job and join her. Hopefully you can see how helpful it can be to look at these 3 must-have elements of your marketing, identify any holes you have, and then address them. Because this initial marketing review has been so helpful to the therapists I've worked with, I've decided to offer a clarity call for those who are serious about going to the next level. This call is perfect for you if you want to double, triple, or quadruple your practice, if you want to increase your client flow so that you can raise your fees and get off panels, or if you want to get off the roller coaster of clients, no clients, clients, no clients. However, while I love helping therapists transform their practices, these calls take a lot of time and energy on my part. So I want to be clear about who this call is not for. The clarity call is not for you if you are really okay with testing a bunch more random ideas without an orderly approach. The call is not for you if you are okay with not making much progress in the next 6 months or a year because you don't really need the money. And the clarity call is not for you if you aren't in a position to invest in your practice growth once you understand where you need to go. This call is really only for those who are ready to go from confused and overwhelmed to clear and confident, and then for those who are ready to make it happen. Again, please only schedule a call if you are serious about making changes and you're ready to invest in your practice. Now, a couple of promises on my part. 1, I will not shame you regarding where you're at with your marketing. None of us are taught this stuff in school, and it's a journey. 2, I will not talk over your head and try to intimidate you with technobabble. That's really not my style. 3, if I cannot help you in your particular situation, I will let you know that, and I'll refer you to someone who can. So the first step is to schedule a clarity call with me, and then to fill out an application. The application will help me determine 1, if I can help you, and 2, how serious you are about taking action. I have limited time slots for these calls, so if you're serious about fixing your practice building problems, click below to get on my schedule. I'd love to help you make your practice exactly what you want it to be, so click below now to schedule your call. Take care.